Time is 6:30. All board members are present. Our purpose tonight is to discuss the agenda items. Dr. Randall?
Madam Chairman, the first item on the agenda is consider approval of out-of-state student trip request. This recommendation, we're asking the board to approve out-of-state travel for the district math finalists to the National Math Competition at the University of Illinois in Chicago on April the 23rd. This is a competition where students in grades 5 through 12 actually participate in this nationwide competition. There were 44,000 students that participated. Of the 564 finalists in 41 states, 8 were from Lamar CISD, and we had 4 that were selected as alternates.
Are there any questions? The only question, I'm just curious, it said grades 5 through 12. Can you kind of break that down of those 4?
Of the ones that are attending?
Yes, the 8.
I don't know specifically. I know roughly which schools that they're from.
Okay.
Secondary, Briscoe, George, Ranch High School, and Reading Junior High.
Miss, I have a question.
Mhm.
Was it recently that they competed in this? Is that why it's coming up so soon?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
It was spring 2016 when they competed.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is discussion and approval of proposed dates for regular board meetings and workshops for the 2016-2017 school year. You'll note that we have a workshop and a regular board meeting that's scheduled except for the June meeting, and that is the same week as SLI in San Antonio. And so what we've done in the past is because the board will be in San Antonio on Thursday, the board meeting had occurred on the Tuesday. And that's certainly up to the board if you want to continue that practice. The next item on the agenda is consider ratification of quarterly investment reports for December 2015 through 2016. This is a report that is provided to the board monthly regarding our quarterly investments, and we're answering questions that you already have.
This is the quarterly one.
The quarterly, I'm sorry. Did I say monthly? Thank you for correcting
There
me,
is a
Jill.
monthly one as well.
Yeah. This is a quarterly one. Next item on the agenda is consider ratification of financial and investment reports.
One quick question on that page 39, that $707,892 puts us 116% over that particular budget item.
You said page 39?
Yes, it's other operating expenditures.
Oh, resources, right? The 719,593?
No.
No.
Down.
I'm sorry. Oh.
6,400.
116% of the budget.
6,400.
Yes, I
Down
see.
6,400.
That is, that is where our electricity is charged, I believe, but I think it has to do with the fact that there's a timing difference because one of the budget amendments from last month is probably not posted. Is that what it is?
We had a shared service arrangement, and it was in 6492, and it's been moved to the 6255. It's the electrical budget.
We just need to
It's just
do,
it's
we need to reclassify
Reclass-
the budget piece, right?
The budget piece is.
Yes.
Okay.
The expenditures have been moved.
So this is just an anomaly here, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
yes. It's a timing difference.
All right, thanks.
Next item on the agenda is consider approval of budget amendment requests. Each month, if there are any budget amendments where we are changing function level, comes to the board for approval.
I have a question. Anybody else? On page 42, It's just to help me understand, the development center project, that money is going to the drainage project for Jackson?
Yes. A few months back, the board approved using available funds, and this is in the bond fund, not in the general operating fund. So it's really reclassifying the use of the funds. Instead of using it on the development center drainage project, it's going to be reallocated to the Jackson project, because that project is expanding.
It still has the same number assignment, that 638?
Right. It's
Okay.
just moving the whole, the bulk of that project budget to a different project.
Okay. Also, those temporary buildings,
If you'll recall, last month, we had an amendment for the actual building of the buildings, and then the FF&E, and then I think the rental of the restroom facilities. But we didn't have good numbers for the, like the security cameras and a few food service FF&E items and things like that. So this is just completing the budget for the portable buildings that we're needing to build for next year.
And most of those are at Hubernet.
Right.
I have a question, and it may not be appropriate for this time, but we're building rather than bringing buildings in now, is that correct? So we're building on site for temporary buildings?
I don't think I understand the question.
Are they building the buildings on site?
Yes, they are.
Instead of bringing buildings in?
Yes, that's my understanding. Kevin, I want to answer that.
Yes, and that's correct. That is correct. And it's just the particular company that we buy from, they'll build on site instead of bringing the two halves together and bringing them together. And we found over the years, they move a whole lot better.
Okay, so they're still portable?
Yes, ma'am.
We're just naming them something different?
They are portable buildings.
Okay.
When you transport a building of that size, they have to cut it in half in order to legally transport it. So it won't have to be, if it's not going to be moved far, it won't have to be cut in half unless it's going to be transported on the highway. So it actually makes for a sturdier building also.
I just wanted to make sure we could still move those from one location to the other.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I have
It's
a
already being
question
discussed.
about the restroom, Mr. McKeever. The restroom building, where is that located at Hubernet?
It's going to go just like the northeast corner of the building, and it's a rental facility to have an outdoor restroom facility there.
Okay.
And it's similar to the one that we had at Lamar Consolidated High School.
High school, yes, sir.
When we were doing the renovations there.
Did Campbell have those too at some point, or they didn't have to do
No,
that?
ma'am.
No,
They didn't.
we never had.
Okay, okay.
Now, I have a question also about about the restroom facilities.
Yes,
Are
sir.
they going to have plumbing running to drainage, or it's going to be a tank, septic? What?
It will be connected to the system. The plumbing will be connected to the
So
sanitary.
it will actually go to the sewer?
Yes, sir.
Good, that's much better. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is consider approval of instructional materials allotment and TICS certification form for 2016-2017. We're asking that the board consider approval of instructional material allotments and authorize the board president, board secretary, and superintendent to execute the document. And this is basically dealing with, you've heard the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills required curriculum for each grade level that's required by the Texas Education Code.
It's just a certification that we've got what we're supposed to have.
And we present it annually.
All right.
The next item on the agenda is consider approval of awards, custom apparel, promotional, and related items. We're asking that the board approve all vendors who responded to the proposal for awards, custom apparels, promotion, and related items for the district. And you have a list of what those items are.
Question.
Yes.
Can you tell me how many of these are local? are within our area? I looked at them, and it looks to me like maybe 3.
I believe we have a few more than that. I can actually get some zip codes applied to that and have it to you before the next meeting to give you a better idea of where these
So
locations are.
we do have some local.
Yes, we absolutely
That are
do.
participating?
Yes.
Good.
Next item is consider approval of amended procurement method criteria for the 2014 bond projects. If you will recall, and Michelle, you might just mention the fact that at the last board meeting, we made an adjustment, and this is going back and correcting those others.
Yes, we made an error on the procurement method criteria that we presented to you back in September of 2015. We also had a discussion about this at the last meeting. We just want to clean that language up, make sure our criteria are clear before they go out in any of the procurements. So it's the exact same change as what you saw last month. It's the removal of item number 7, which is the vendor's principal place of business. We have to omit that in construction projects. So we've moved and added the additional points to number 6, which is the proposed team offerings.
Can you explain the logic to me why they don't like having,
I
it looks
will-
like that a local supplier would be advantageous?
It is an ongoing battle. What is probably more important to understand is that this criteria and that specific statement is included in TEA 44031, which is kind of where I live and breathe.
Right.
But then when we do construction, we have to move over into the government code. And the government code's a little bit different, and so these items are not included. And in 44, they specifically say that you have to omit that. They don't really give a rationale for it. It does become difficult for school districts across Texas because we want our local businesses to be supported, especially when we're doing construction efforts and bond efforts. So that makes it incumbent upon the district and more specifically the purchasing office to be more vocal and market our projects a little bit better. So that puts a little bit of extra work on us, which we're fine with, and we want to encourage that local business. But unfortunately, we're not allowed to award them points for their locale.
Okay. It's just,
But that makes sense.
It's politics.
you explained it when you said government.
Oh, okay. I could have stopped there. J government, huh?
Michelle,
you.
when I was going through this, number 4 and number 6 seemed like they were a little bit repetitious. Can you explain the difference?
They're very subjective. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little bit. The extent to which the goods and services, pardon me, meet the district needs is subjective in its nature, whereas number 6 is actually looking at resumes, and we're looking to see what their work experience is, where in number 4, we're looking at what they can provide us. Oh, thank you so much. Did that clarify your question a little bit?
Yes, ma'am. And by the way, and maybe I'm a little bit late, but your group got a pretty big award, didn't they?
We
Would you
did
mind
last month.
explaining that to
Yes.
everybody?
Sure. That was the Award of Merit. We worked very hard with TASBA, which is the Texas Association of Business, School Business Officials. Sorry, 2 days off, and we've been kind of, I'm still in flood vacation. So it's a great award. What it shows is a measure of all of our procurement attributes, how we go procure, how we market, how we operate, and of course, consistency with the laws and the rules and the regulations that we're required to follow. It also has a large mandate about training employees, because we want to train our folks to move them up into the ranks and be able to grow within. So there's some huge point considerations for that. There's also a few extra points because I've been doing this a long time, so that helps a little bit too. At least a little of my gray hair contributes to some points, so we're good. But we were very pleased and honored to receive that special recognition.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is consider approval of National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance interlocal agreement. And we're asking that the board approve this, and Michelle will give you a little overview.
Absolutely. This is a interlocal agreement with an organization that we have previously not had an interlocal with. The National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance actually will allow us to procure specifically Dell computers and remain compliant with the new federal regulations in EDGAR, which you all have kind of heard about over the last couple of months. DIR, there's been some questions as to whether or not they are completely EDGAR compliant. While this particular organization shows that they are compliant with the federal regs, we want to make sure that all of our procurement is aligned with that. So we did reach out to them. They could show us the forms and documentation and prove that they are EDGAR compliant. So we will begin purchasing Dell computers and some other technology items through this cooperative if approved, if the interlocal is approved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is consider approval of donations to the district. Consider approval of resolution proclaiming Public School Paraprofessional Day. Consider approval of resolution proclaiming School Nurses Week. Consider approval of resolution proclaiming Teacher Appreciation Week. The next item on the agenda is consider approval of request for a 2016 historic site exemption qualification for the Symington School, and the board asked us to bring back some additional information regarding that property, and Ms. Ludwig will share that.
Okay, so in your item, you will see some additional information that was not in the item last month. That particular property is split 80%, 20%. 20% attributed to the professional office building and business that's in that facility, and then 80% to the residential portion. The part that is subject to this request is the residential side, not the business side. A little bit more information about the business that is in that facility. It's called Osborne Photography, but it's really more like an art gallery. There is, excuse me, photography taken with old cameras, antiques, and various things like that. So it's not what you think of as a traditional photography business. It is also helping to improve the historical nature of the building. But again, this site exemption request is on the residential side. Fort Bend County has already granted the exemption for 2016. So that's all the additional information I have.
Who actually owns that building?
Paula Reeder, who is the person that's requesting the exemption. The attachments were submitted to the county appraisal district by her.
Thank you.
Is that who's owned it in the past with the exemptions that have been?
To my knowledge, it is, yes.
So it's not a complete tax relief, it's just a portion?
Right.
Okay.
But it's 80%,
It's-
correct? So it's a pretty significant portion of it. Is this a place where anyone can walk in and view well, I guess that doesn't really matter because the residential portion is what they're asking for an exemption for, so.
Correct.
For percent?
Okay.
But is it the whole 80% or percent of the 80%?
It's
The whole
80% of the 100% value.
But I mean, the tax relief is on the whole 80%.
On 80%. The property is valued at $391,920. And so 80% of that is $312,580, and that's what they're asking for the exemption for, or on, and it's
Does she
valued at
live-
about
does she live
$4,300.
there?
Yes,
She's the one that, with her Simonton address?
yes,
Okay, so Ms. Reeder lives there, that's her homestead.
right. It actually has a homestead on it as well.
And how long has she lived there?
I'm guessing, but I'm thinking 12 years. Because in a conversation that's,
And how old is she? It won't tell you.
I don't know. That I don't know.
Maybe we need to take a field trip.
I believe they're actually in the audience.
Can they respond? They can't respond to this question.
And that part I don't know.
Ray, can they respond to those questions?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The homestead residents,
In terms of
can they?
the-
We can't discuss it,
If we
can
have
we?
any questions
No, we can't
of
discuss, but
the-
if we have a
The
question.
people that are actually living there.
It's really generally not been your practice to allow people to participate from the audience in your meeting. My suggestion would be if you have any requests for information of the homeowners, that the administration provide that information in advance of the regular board meeting. So you can consider.
Submit the questions if we have
Yes.
to Dr. Randall.
And we have informed them that they can speak in audience to patrons as well,
Thursday.
before Thursday's meeting.
Okay,
yeah.
good. All right. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill.
Next item on the agenda is consider approval of inter-district student transfers for 2016-2017 school year. Historically, the district has, if you're an employee of the district, you have the opportunity to bring your children with you, and they can attend school in our school district, but we're required each year to get board approval of who those students are.
I have a question. Are any of these schools now restricting transfers from local families to any of these schools that we're approving for inter-district transfers? In other-
If I understand your question correctly, they're not being restricted.
The schools that are here. We
Yes.
like, I think it was Taylor Ray.
But the employees have the opportunity to, unless they get to a point where they're displacing other students. And so if that is the case, then they'll have to choose another school.
None of the ones that you're talking about, they all on the bottom said that they did not exclude
Right.
employee transfers.
Right.
The ones you're talking about from last week, they all said at the bottom that everyone except for
Employees
employees.
transfer.
So if we have someone that wants to transfer that's from the district, a family, into that school, but it's already closed, the intro district overrides that transfer.
That's correct.
And isn't it usually by grade level too, that they kind of look at it? Because certain grade levels might not be full.
And that's,
Okay.
and that's when we tell them that they may have to place their students in another.
Because you don't ever want to have to put another teacher in.
That's correct.
To take care of,
That's
That's
what,
correct.
that's where I was coming with the numbers
Okay.
I was seeing.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Next item is consider approval of purchase agreements for TASB Energy Cooperative Member Purchaser Fixed Rate Transportation Fuel Program. Mouthful.
Yes, sir. What we're looking at is a purchasing agreement, which was all, the interlocal agreement was brought to the board in April of 2014. And so this is a second contract that we'll be entering to fix our diesel fuel rate and our gasoline rate for the next 18 months to start May 1st and go through to August 31 of 2017. And,
Did they bring the fuel to the bus barns?
yes, sir.
Now, if fuel prices drop below what the agreement is, are we free to go and purchase from another source?
What we have here is, we're not agreeing to do a whole 100% of what we purchase. We're looking at about 75%. And so with fuel prices low now and they're rising, that's what, we still have to buy the amount that we're specifying that we're gonna buy, but then that allows us in the future, if fuel does drop below, we can purchase it at the petroleum traders at the pump if it's lower. We can
At-
still.
And that's after we purchase the 70%.
No, we're just, in the 18 months, we have to get to that 70%. So we have some flexibility throughout the contract.
I don't know if that's enough flexibility. I mean, it may not be possible, but I would push for at least 50%. If we're gonna have to guarantee what we're gonna purchase.
We've easily met the threshold in the past, and I
Yeah.
believe it was higher on the previous
On
contract.
the previous contract, yes.
TASB is a good partner to the district, so there are some waivers that we can request. If the fuel drops significantly, we can go back to them and they can resell our allotment to other school districts, maybe in West Texas and other areas where they're paying significantly higher, almost do like a trade-out. So
I know some places where it's significantly higher than it is here.
yes, absolutely. And we do have some options. If we get in a bind and we feel like we're paying too much, we can go back to our rack rates and purchase whatever's current and then negotiate with TASB to resell those options for us.
Okay.
So we do have flexibility, and it doesn't completely bind us where we can't look at some other options to be more balanced with our budget.
As long as we have options.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I have one more question.
Yes.
Just, I was trying to read all of this. And
It's a lot.
I know, it finally just, that's your job. But it said prices exclude all taxes and fees.
Yes.
We are tax exempt,
Yes.
but what are the fees?
Well,
What are
typically,
they talking about?
there's pass-through fees, and we're exempt from many of those
That
as
also?
well. Yeah, this contract covers a lot of that and doesn't obligate the district to pay any additional fees over the top.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any-
Next item on the agenda is consider approval of engineer rankings for the Foster High School water plant upgrades, HVAC controls, and other bond projects.
Good evening. I thought I'd give you a brief explanation of what this is. Two projects that are on the 2014 bond program are HVAC control upgrades district-wide and water plant upgrades at Foster High School to add more capacity, more wells at that site. So we went out for RFQs in January. We received 5 proposals, and we have ranked those firms based on what they asked for. Some of the firms asked for, both projects, the water plant as well as HVAC controls, so we've separated those. Other firms only asked for the HVAC controls. So the way we intend to move forward with this is Estes McClure and Associates was the #1 ranked firm overall and was only interested in the HVAC controls. So that would be the firm we would go to first on those. KCI Technologies was the highest ranked firm that asked for the water plant facilities, and so we would work with them on that project. So at this point, we are just at the ranking stage. We would then sit down with those firms, negotiate a contract, and then bring that forward.
Any questions?
I have a question. Does that mean that if there was a firm that was interested in both projects, they were eliminated from?
No.
No.
No. And you have the scoring sheets, I think, in your attachment. If you look at the second page, we ranked these firms as a group, not separating them from one project or the other. And you can see that Estes McClure's did have the highest rank of all firms, and so we would value that expertise. The highest ranked firm that was interested in the water plant upgrades was also interested in the HVAC controls. So we have the option to go either way, but our initial intent is to go with Estes McClure's for the HVAC controls, as they were the highest ranked firm, and then KCI on the water plant. Now, we have not sat down and negotiated with them at all, and so that would be our starting point. We also added language that would have other bond projects. So should we come up with other projects, other engineering projects that the district may want to out of this bond program, we have the ability to go to those firms as well. We don't have anything envisioned at this moment in time, but there may be something that would come up. So that's what that other bond projects is all about. It's really a placeholder that if we have another project, we don't have to go back out for solicitation. It gives us the ability to contract with them.
So you don't have to start the whole process all over.
Correct.
Okay.
And-
Okay, is KCI going to be considered for the HVAC? Are they going to be putting in a bid?
We would initially talk to SS McClure's for the HVAC controls. That would be our initial intent. They were the highest ranked firm overall, and they were interested in the HVAC controls. KCI was interested in both, but they were not the highest ranked firm overall. So we would look to split those up.
Well, at this point, if we're going to be negotiating with them to handle one project, I think we should get bids because it'd be advantageous financially to the district to have one firm do both projects.
That's a consideration. We don't want to select based on price, but we can certainly talk to them about that.
Thank you.
The second one, the next one, item 15, CenterPoint Energy electrical development fees for new elementary 24. Previously, you have approved the terms and conditions and the blanket easement for CenterPoint at this site. This is the final document that actually ties the dollars to those development costs. It is $3,403, and we would recommend approval of that. Okay. Item 16.
Hang on just a minute,
sorry.
everybody's trying to get there. Hang on just a second.
We did attach the terms and conditions for your information with that, so it's a,
And item 16 is consider approval of CSP number 20, 2016 VRG for elementary 25. Is everyone there now? Did I get?
Page 101.
Page 101. Okay, now.
now I'm ready.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. This is a good news story. We've been real concerned about construction costs over the last few years going up. We did have a little higher budget in this project than we did on elementary 24. We were concerned when we had two bidders interested in this project. Right at this point in time, a number of school districts are bidding projects that they want to open in August of 2017. And so we were one of those school districts competing for the contractors that build schools. We put a number of bid alternates in the project to make sure that we ensured that we could meet the budget. So we have a base bid that was fairly low, and then we are recommending adding alternates back. The good news is we are under budget significantly, and I will say that we are $997,000 under the construction budget with this award recommendation, which gives us the systems that we wish to have. The structured floor slab is similar to Arredondo and Elementary 24. And Dramal, as you know, is currently constructing the high school at Fulshire and has done, I think they did Arredondo as well. So we're very excited and we recommend approval.
Mr. Hoyt, I have a question. Gamma is currently doing number 24, correct?
Yes.
And so what you're saying is that they did not submit a bid?
No, the week before, Gamma was apparent low bidder on two other schools of a similar capacity, and we talked to them intently about doing this. They said we could chase this project, but we don't have a superintendent that we could give you until partway through the construction. And they said, would you accept that? We said, no, we need a qualified superintendent to start. And that's what a number of contractors are right now, is they're stretched pretty thin with their staff, with so many projects bidding. So that's, and there's probably 20 contractors that we reached out to.
Is that why Jamala didn't bid 24? Is it the same scenario, but the other way around? Because they kind of dropped off.
Dramala did not bid 24 because of the time frame when 24 went out. They did not have a team to make that bid.
Because they were still in Arredondo and had people in Fulshire.
In other locations, yes.
But Jamala has built this footprint before, correct?
Yes.
Now, are you saying that some of these contractors that have been on these jobs are stretched too thin to put a superintendent out there?
The only one we were told that was Gamma. They were actually the ones that told us that they did not have a qualified superintendent to meet our qualifications.
Okay.
The other contractors we talked to, we're already lined up with bidding other projects, and there's been a lot of work going on. And right at this point, there are so many schools that we're bidding in the spring that's where most of the contractors were already pre-committed.
Well, in commercial construction, our contractors have to put up a performance bond in case they don't meet the deadlines. Are they doing that?
Yes.
There, okay.
Yes.
And Board, want to make sure that you saw the additional document that was placed at your table this evening.
Mr. Hoyt, can you tell me who was involved in evaluating this process?
Myself, Mike Woods from my staff, and Kevin.
And maintenance.
And Aaron Aaron Morgan from maintenance.
So three LCISD staff members and yourself, is that correct?
Two and two from us.
2 and 2?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And
How
both-
many vendors applied, just those two?
Pardon me?
How
Yes,
many
ma'am.
vendors applied, just those?
Just two.
Just those two.
Just two.
bid on the project.
And we've used them before in our district.
Yes.
Forgot what school they.
They just
Durotech.
finished Arizona.
Yeah,
Durotech.
That's right, Arizona.
No.
Dramala
I
built
mean,
Arizona.
Yeah.
and the Fulcher complex.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Now, what does the bonds that they put up specify? What happens if they don't meet the deadline?
They're payment and performance bonds, and so they are there to guarantee payment to subcontractors, and they're also there to guarantee performance.
So if we have to bring somebody else in, they're going to pay for it.
We do have teeth in the contract that allows us to supplement their work, but it's under certain specific conditions. It's basically if they are not performing their work as required, and that's a tough road to follow, because if you have subcontractors working, and you want to supplement the workforce, trying to carve out the piece of the work that the subcontractor would do, you have the ability to do that, but hopefully we don't have to do that.
I would like a copy of that, please.
Okay?
The next item on the agenda is consider approval of Texas Education Code compliance review for elementary school number 25.
I have a question.
Yes.
I know that we saw this agenda item in the last board meeting, but it was actually for number 24. My question is how is this different than what we approved last month for consider approval of third-party review and inspection for 25? I thought they were pretty much the same.
One is for the Texas accessibility standards for ADA requirements, essentially.
So last month's was for ADA
Yeah.
requirements?
This one is for the code compliance to meet the International
Okay.
Building Code requirements.
Thank you.
This takes the place of the county doing those plan reviews. And this certifies to the county that those reviews were done. So it's required for us to have that code review done by an outside party, separate from the design team, separate from the program management team.
Okay. And are we using the same firm that we used for number 24? Are we
No,
using-
this is a different firm. American Construction Investigations is one of the firms. There are just a limited number of firms that do that in this area. This is a firm that, have you had?
We've used them.
The district has used them before, and so we talked through that before we went to them. And I will say that this firm offered a lower price, even though we weren't competing with price, but it was a lower price than what we had on elementary 24. Not a significant difference, but still lower.
Okay, thank
Now,
you.
by using these guys, do we completely eliminate having to go through county inspection?
No. There are still selected county inspections that are still required. Fire and certain other inspections are required. But we also have a testing firm, Terracon, on site that will be doing structural testing as well. And those test results are used also as part of the inspection
But-
requirements.
So then by using this firm, what we have is the assurance that everything is up to code before the county comes out.
Yeah, this is saying that the contract documents follow the 2012 International Building Code.
If everything's right before they come out, it'll save us a lot of time, so.
Exactly.
It's worth it.
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is consider approval of change order number 1 for the Churchill Fulshear Junior High, Churchill Fulshear High School.
Right behind you.
Name Junior High School Complex.
So, good evening. This is change order number 1 for Dramala Construction that covers 2 items at the complex. One of them is one that we've been discussing, at least in the Building Facilities Committee, which has to do with the pumps that we're adding for the high school. And the issue that we have out there is that the city water pressure that's being supplied by Fulshear right now is not meeting the requirements that we need for the fire systems. The fire systems require certain pressures in order for them to meet codes. And right now, what the city is supplying to us does not meet that requirement.
Has this changed from the time when we started the design on this facility?
It has not.
Well, why does this surprise to us then?
It's not a surprise to us. That's why we've been talking about it that's why we've been talking about it.
I understand, but
And it is the reason that we did bid these pumps as alternates at the time that we bid the project. What's happened is that part of what we did is the district did fund the city to upgrade their water plant,
Yes.
which the city is in the process of doing.
right.
That work is not complete. We don't anticipate that it will be complete and by the time that we need to open this project.
When they do complete it, will the pressure from the city of Fulshear be enough to supply this?
I can't answer that question.
But one of the key things you just told me, you had this in the original bid as a contingency, and now you're having to exercise that
We had it in the bid as alternates.
as an alternate. Yes.
So we bid it at the time we bid the project 18 months ago, so
And
that we're not
hoping
paying.
that you wouldn't have to invoke.
Hoping that we wouldn't have to do it, that
Invoke
the
this
city.
change notice, and
That's correct.
unfortunately, that didn't work out.
Unfortunately, that did not work out.
All right, thank you.
If we go ahead and use the
But they
pumps, and then we get the water supply that is needed from the city, we'd be able to pull the pumps and set them aside for another project.
You certainly could do that. I would caution you, however, that city water pressure is not something that is constant. There are instances, not in this district, but in other districts right now, where schools that have been in place for a number of years, the water pressure is no longer meeting the requirements, so they're having to go in and add pumps.
So it'd probably be a good idea to keep the pumps there just in case.
Absolutely.
So you kind of saw this coming down the road?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Well, particularly with the growth in Fulshear and the additional demand that's going to be on their water system,
That's correct.
so it's good insurance.
That's correct. Right.
Mr. Bailey, I have a question.
Yes.
As it's written, it's a change order, and with change orders comes a significant increase in price.
That's correct.
But what I'm hearing from you is that it was expected and already bid. So what is the difference between an allotted amount that was set aside and a change order?
Typically, there's a couple of different ways. One of the things that we could have done is we could have put an allowance in Dramala's contract and said, we're gonna set aside money in their contract to do that. And if we don't do it, then they give us the allowance back. In this particular instance, we did not do that. We bid it as alternates, but we did not accept the alternates, but we had the right to accept them later.
Well, I guess I'm having a difficult time with that because you foresaw the issue.
Yes.
And we could have saved some money, correct?
That's correct.
In doing an allotment.
That's correct.
And instead, we're doing a change order that just really just increases our price.
That's correct. The subtle difference there, and it's a real subtle difference, is when an allowance is placed in a contract, that allowance already has the contractor's fees and general conditions on it, and when you get it back, you don't get their fee and general conditions.
The ultimate price is about the same.
Ultimate price is the
What
same.
they had included in it as,
Absolutely. It is the same. And if you put it in as an allowance and you don't use that money, all you're getting is the cost of the work. You're not getting their fee and general conditions returned to you.
And even with the change order, this is still within the budget?
That is still within the project budget, that's correct. That's correct.
let me check on that just a second.
Yeah.
Last time in the facilities team meeting, we also heard the additional cost to move the concession stand.
Yes.
Is that coming in as a change notice as well?
That is not.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is consider approval of deductive change order number 1 and final payment for the Terry High School running track resurfacing project.
This was a project that was funded from the, I believe it was the 2003 available bond funds, and it has been completed. We took substantial completion February 2nd, and what this is just releases the amount of money that's left over in that contract and a deductive change order and then final payment to Hellis Construction.
Next item on the agenda is consider approval of names for new elementary schools and middle school number 5. Board members, I think today you got the updated information.
Any questions?
Okay.
I did want to clarify one thing. I know, Ms. Kaminsky, you had stated at the previous board meeting you were concerned about the 5 elementary schools versus 4, and I think what you were referencing was Tamarind Lakes, and I understand that we're contractually obligated to name that school in Tamarind Lakes Tamarind Elementary. Now, if you look at the demographic report, that would be the 8th school needed in terms of if you're going in order of these 5. Of course, demographics and growth can change, especially north of 1093 with the fast growth in the Fulshear-Katy area. So if the board felt like there was any possibility of elementaries number 27 or 28 being in Tamron despite the current demographic report, you could easily add some verbiage to the motion clarifying that that would be named Tamron Elementary if, for some reason, the growth accelerated due to contractual obligations and whatever name was slated for 27 or 28 would move down to the next one. Again, currently Tamron is number 31 based upon the demographic report. So it's up to the board if we feel comfortable that that will be in the next bond referendum or if it's something you're concerned about. Now, that was the, are we naming 5 or 4? Just wanted to make the board aware of that. And if there's some interest in that, we can certainly add some verbiage to the motion and then communicate that once the names are set.
I think that would be the thing to do.
Now, the only question is how we translate the list of however many we have to 5
Exactly.
into 1. What's the process plan on using for that, Madam Chair?
Yeah, I was looking at this, and I did not anticipate a tie. Like we did the first one, that through the 14, we took the top scores as far as from 5 to 2. And I was looking at this, if you look at the votes, 6, 5, 4, 3, and 3, that is 5 schools that we could go down to as a suggestion. But how to come to the 4, or I'm sorry, to the 3 schools? We're picking the 5 schools. I'm sorry.
Actually, if you look at the way the votes go, there's a cutoff at 5 in elementary schools.
Yes.
And there's 2 people for the middle schools, one of which is in that top 5. So to me, I mean, these are votes without discussion, that if we're gonna go by votes, then to me, that would mean that the person who scored number 1 for the elementary school, I mean, for the middle school, they're already in the naming for elementary, so you could bump the person up, and so that way, you know, that person was listed on 2 things, that person qualified in the top 5 for elementaries. Then since enough people specified those 2 people in middle schools, then you could bump, and, you know, obviously, they're both Fulshear people that were on the
Right.
middle school vote, so you could try to tie a Fulshear school into that other person he talked about in the naming process somewhere down the road, but it, you know, I mean.
And that's
To me,
kind
that's
of the way I was looking at it, that the fact that we had one name in both categories, if we took the top 5, that would be Ms. Lindsay Carter, Mr. Bentley, Mr. Culver, and Mr. Morgan. And since Mr. Bentley's already on the top to be named for a school, when we go down to the middle school, that would put the Mr. Roberts in the 4. That would break the tie.
Yes. That's what I said.
Yeah, you said it. I go into that.
That just seems like the fair, I mean, we all voted, that just seems like the fairest, because the votes break it out that way, at least, I mean.
So if we can agree on that, then Thursday, we can bring it up.
Are we going to have a discussion as to
Top 5.
why or why not someone should have a school named after him?
We can do that on Thursday.
That would be
Thursday.
Okay.
Okay, so right now, we have a set goal of, as far as their rankings, it would be the 5. And then for the middle school, the tie would be the second person in line. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rockland.
Next item is deliberation and action regarding recommendation for selection of a facilitator for board training.
Ms. Kaminsky and I actually met to talk about this, determine what we need to do here. And rather than us charging out and finding somebody to facilitate this, what we thought the appropriate thing may be to do is go ahead and constitute this subcommittee to actually work on this stuff and not have the facilitator sitting there waiting for a period of time. Get this subcommittee constituted, let them go ahead and start to work on actually looking at what revisions to the operating procedures and the board policy we would like to have done. They can begin working on that and then let that team, once they sort of bracket how much work needs to be done and what we want to do, then let them actually interview these folks rather than us having a phone call and not being able to really do a good job of vetting them. So we would charge that team with actually talking to several of these people who could facilitate that process. That way this team can get working, they can look at how much work we have to do, and then when they talk to the facilitator, it gives the facilitator a better idea of what needs to be done and how much work needs to be done. So it would be, the recommendation we came up with was to have Ms. Kaminsky appoint the subcommittee to start working on this, and then let them, when they feel it's time, to review these facilitators and then bring that back to the board for approval.
And we might actually find
So in
somebody
other
else.
words, the action item after this, where it's saying the board will discuss creating a committee to review the board operating procedures and policies, in our discussion, that should come first. And then go to
Yes,
selecting the facilitator.
Yes, rather than us rushing in and talking to people and having maybe an idea of whether they're qualified or not, we really don't have the scope of the amount of work that needs to be done to talk to these facilitators. And there's quite a bit of work this team we foresee having to do, and getting this stuff starting to write it, maybe reviews with TASB so they can lay out the whole plan, the length of time it's taking, and then when would be the appropriate time to actually enter in a contract with the facilitator.
In this way, I guess you're not trying to put the cart before the horse and not,
Yes.
and trying to spend money that we don't really know.
That's correct.
we should-
Exactly. We're
Yep.
not wasting their time
And our-
trying to
and our
figure
money,
out.
yeah.
If
We're
we got
getting
a
what
horse
we-
instead of an elephant, then we hire a horse rider instead of an elephant trainer.
Okay.
And for the
That makes
purpose of your meeting tomorrow, you would not have to take any action on the
B21.
B21, and you would take action on
B21.
Yes, that was the logic we had, and that gives your explanation for what you just, the way we
Right. And as far as the committee, what we're looking at right now is Mr. Tyson, Mr. Steenbergen, and Ms. Danziger to bring it to the board.
And you actually have to formally
Do that on
Do that tomorrow.
Do that on
Thursday. I just wanted to clean that up.
In case we went to say.
Yeah, volunteers.
The next item on the agenda is deliberation and possible action regarding process for selecting and hiring external auditor to perform operational audits as determined by the board.
We also chatted about this a bit.
just a bit.
Having some experience from my previous work about audits, when you talk about an internal audit, it sounds kind of ominous. Internal audit, well, we really don't have an internal audit organization. What I believe we're talking about is a functional review of all the functions that make up LCISD, including the board. With the functional review, what you're doing is you get somebody on the outside to take a look if each of these functions are operating within the rules, guidelines, goals, policy of each department. And this is not to find any gotchas. This is basically to set the tone for the growth of this district long-term. Are we complying with all the things that each of our organizations is charged to do? I've gone through these things before, and it's really very helpful to have somebody external take a look and say, yeah, you're doing very well over here, but you've got a problem over here, or even the interaction between these functions, they take a look at things like that. So it is a functional review, and as I said, that includes the board's function as well. As somebody stepping back away from the day-to-day operations of the district and say, okay, you're doing very well here, you've got some issues over here, but it gives us the basis for taking this district into the future. And like I say, it's not to find a gotcha or witch hunt or anything else. It's simply reviewing how we all do our business. If we're doing it according to the rules and regulations we've had laid down for each of our groups. And, we have our rules and regulations, and it's to take a look, are we complying with that? And yes, it takes a lot of time. They will look at files, they will talk to people, there's interviews. It's a fairly complex issue, and if we can get this cranked up, or we could actually do this over the summertime where we're not engaged in all the other things that goes on in school, I think it'd be very beneficial long-term how we're looking down the road for the future of this district.
We were talking a lot about the growth, trying to be a step ahead as far as what are we going to need in the near future. We know we're growing fast, but we want to kind of have a baseline to start and be prepared. In other words, proactive as to, are we
may have all
doing
the
it
stuff in
right?
place, but unless we have somebody to take a look and say, okay, here's where we're headed, here's what we've got, are we performing per our own rules and regulations? If we're not, where do we improve that? And what do we need to be looking at in the future to make sure that we're going to handle this district the way we should?
Have we had
Something like that had already been done with, through TASB, or is it?
But I think some years ago, I don't know if it's been done in a long time, but I know we've had something like that back.
We've had different types of audits in the past, everything from construction audits to, prior to my even coming to the district, there was a curriculum management audit. That's probably what you're thinking about.
Individual
We did
ones.
the audit that you're referencing dealt with, what am I thinking about right now?
Employee salary.
And we did the audit for employee salaries, and TASB did that. But we had A&M, the group from A&M to come out and take a look. Transportation audit. So we've done some of those, but I certainly welcome and am excited about any type of outside group taking a look at what we're doing, because they will validate the things that we're doing, or they will tell us that there are areas that we need to take and improve on. And I certainly am excited that we're looking at those types of things.
I think from a district standpoint, it's something we really need to do, the way we're going and all, to me, the time is just right for getting this done.
Do we have names?
Exactly right. No, we don't.
I needed to add, Michelle, can you explain the process? Because we have to go through the RFQ, and there's steps that we have to go through. We just don't go and hire somebody.
No, I've got rules.
Government rules.
Government rules. Yes.
Could you explain that to us?
Typically, the audits are performed by a licensed professional. There's several companies. Gibson Consulting comes to mind immediately. There's a few others that are in their field. What they will do is they will submit an RFQ statement to us and give us their sheet of what they've done in the past, how they can help our school district, what they've done for other school districts. And again, remember, we don't base that initially on the price. We negotiate price after the fact. But we can absolutely execute an RFQ for that type of service to be performed here.
How fast can you
So
get
is that what we're going to do on Thursday when we
Do we make a motion for that?
To make a motion to,
Well, you can, but I'll tell you, the first thing that needs to be determined is the scope of the services
Yes.
that you want them to perform. So, for instance, if it was less than $50,000, you wouldn't have to go through the formal procurement that Michelle is describing.
It'd be more than 50,000.
Well, it depends, but they're also going to need for you to lay out some priorities for them in terms of the work that they might do for you.
So what we would do then would be to have a group work with Michelle, and here's sort of describe what we think we want to have done. And that will allow her to put the requirements in an RFQ.
Right. I can give you some samples of things I've done in the past, and that will help you kind of build the scope function. And then once we have the scope down, then they clearly understand. It's really, writing a scope is like it kind of explaining to someone how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that's never done it. You're going to tell them in great detail that here is our flow chart. This is how our administration works. This is how our board functions. And we want you to start at the top and narrow down and exactly what it is you're expecting to see. They need to have full guidance because they're going to need to know how many staff they're going to need to have on board, how long interviews are going to take, what your timeline is. If this is something that you're expecting to have done over a specific period of time, they're going to need to be aware of it. Just like we were talking earlier about the construction field, this field tends to get busy as well, so we'll need to put it out there and aggressively market it. We want to give them a large window to be able to put their proposal together. So once you guys get a scope and we can piece that together, we can put it out on the street, but we want to give them at least 3 to 4 weeks to respond against a deadline. And then we'll need to sit down, just like you guys have in the facilities area, and review resumes, review what they can offer to the district. Again, everything but price. And so we'll create a rubric based on what they're going to submit to us and how we want that to look in the end. Vendors like that very much when you draw them a very nice picture and give them more or less a recipe to create that cookbook with.
so do we have to do any type of action then on Thursday, or just to get that process started, or can that be?
I think.
Well, I think you could select the chosen vendor and then authorize negotiation with the vendor for the cost of the services, with the understanding that they will have to provide you a projected project cost for any specific audit work that they do for you.
But I don't know that you can do that on Thursday.
No.
Yeah.
But I'm asking-
The latter half would have to come at a latter meeting, so all you would be doing is saying, okay, we select a particular consultant to come in and do the work, and we authorize the administration to negotiate that.
When I'm
I'm
asking
thinking
what's
we're putting one in front of the other.
Yeah,
Just-
how is,
They're asking what they should be authorizing us to do as far as initiating the procurement, which I think.
And I'm not sure that there needs to be a formal motion. of
that's what
any
I'm
sort.
asking,
I
if we
think
need to
that-
take any action on number 23.
This is a sit-down working session with purchasing here to help us to draft the scope of the work that we expect to do before we give it to any.
Pre-release.
Well, there's an initial determination to be made by the board. Assuming that the auditor that will be performing the services is in the nature of a CPA, then you would not have to go out for formal procurement to
Not a
do that.
CPA type.
Yeah, but
This
I
is
think
not-
our nature is typically to be transparent. So I think that they would want to see more than one submission to compare. I'm just guessing, I'm not
You
sure.
can choose to do that, and if you do that, then you would go through the request for qualification.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Which is a
Okay.
formal.
Yeah.
the
Yes.
question is, do you need a motion to start a procurement process?
How do we give you
Have her launch one.
permission to start
Well,
it?
the board, since it's a board-initiated action, the board should vote to authorize the administration to go forward with the request for qualification.
But is that part of this number 23? Is that how we're going to do it through? That's what I'm asking, is how does number 23 fit into us?
It authorizes proceed, but before she actually gets out with anything, then there's work that we have to do to provide to purchasing.
Sure.
So that's fine. It gets us kicked off.
Well, she will initiate the process that will allow you to review a procurement
Yes.
where there will be a recommendation for the most qualified contractor to perform the services.
Yes.
And then, once you select that number one contractor, then you'll go to the next step of negotiating a contract.
I just wanted to know what.
Correct. And to tie off something that Rick mentioned before, there is a possibility that we could find a firm that's not covered by professional service. So what we'll do initially, before we start talking 100% about scope, is we'll talk about some of the attributes that you want to bring forward in the solicitation. So we won't actually be issuing a procurement for an RF qualification. What we'll be doing is just deferring the purchasing department to act on a solicitation for these services. That will leave the window open so that if we do find firms, and there are many qualified firms that are not a professional service that can be procured through an RFP process instead of an RFQ process. Now remember, with the RFP process, you're actually seeing a dollar amount, which that's kind of the best home run part because you know exactly how much this is going to be up front. So we can look at both of those options. Again, it's going to depend on what type of firm you're going to want to have do this work. But we can visit about that before we issue anything out and work on the scope.
We rely on your expertise to guide us.
I'll be there.
I think I'd like to get a copy of all the different audits we currently have and how much they cost. And,
Okay.
I think the board should also consider, what are some of these existing audits that we're doing, and that this particular audit doesn't overlap any of the ones that are already done
Sure.
or already in
And
place.
I think Jill might be able to piece some of that information together. What I can also provide to you is what I've done in my previous career. I had several audit requests when I was with Fort Bend, and I actually have tabulations and pricing and board documents, and I'm happy to share those, just so you have a frame of reference.
This is not a CPA company.
Some of it is, but then some of it isn't. It
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it
But it's not.
depends on exactly what it is.
Definition, when I talked to Mr. Gibson, he kind of came up with a definition of an internal audit as being a professional service that provides oversight, data analysis, management team, achievement gaps, finances, receive data in all areas, including academic achievement.
Absolutely.
Is that kind of what we're looking for to give him the scope of what we are looking for?
Well, while I would agree with that, I also, again, want to remind you that there are other firms and organizations here in the state of Texas that can provide similar services and get you all the information you need, but not under the professional services guidance. They would actually be procured through an RFP. I've done several in the past where we've actually had groups come in and they've evaluated special ed as an example, and that wasn't a professional service organization. And I think that's kind of what Rick and I were kind of sharing in two different ways to make sure that you understood that it may not be an RFQ, it may be an RFP. We just need to sit down and clearly understand, as we're working on that scope, what it is you want to see in the end, what that sandwich is going to look like when it's all pieced together.
I know he also explained like the financial, he said, it's going to be expensive. So a lot of districts break it down. What is kind of your top priority, maybe your section, second, and put it in order. You don't have to hire them on, it's kind of like a long-term contract. So you only pay them as they go.
Absolutely, but we don't want them to repeat services. So we have a financial audit every year,
The only thing on that, I would disagree, is that if we're going to get a baseline, we get it fresh.
Okay.
Instead of saying from 2012, this report was given in 2013. Everything starts this year.
Okay.
It's both an issue of cost and capacity. They literally may not have the capacity to come in and you tell them we want simultaneous audit of every department within the district. Correct?
I didn't get the idea that was a suggestion. It was better to just go one step at a time.
Yeah, so in another district where Michelle and I worked this out, there was a master agreement. And the master agreement provided that as the board prioritized audits in any given year, then the firm would have to prepare a proposal for the particular audit, cost proposal, and the board would have to authorize them to proceed with that particular audit. So, for example, you may say, well, we want an audit of food services. That's the number one priority of the district. You will already have a master agreement in place. They'll prepare a cost proposal for that particular audit, and then the board will review it and either agree or not agree with that cost proposal to move forward with that particular audit.
One other piece of this, sort of, is the financial audit. This is also the time of year where we engage our financial auditors. We are required by law to have an external financial audit every year. They typically do the starting procedures in the summer. They do an interim review of our financials and our internal controls and all those type things during the summer. And then they come back after we close books in the October-November timeframe and finish their audit. So we're about to begin the financial audit piece as well, but that's a separate engagement. So I just wanted to remind everybody that will probably be on our agenda for next month.
These
for
functional
May.
audits I've been involved in, they actually look at the interrelationship between functions as well. You know, who's performing services for whom, and how is that working out? Do we have a department that's bogging down everybody else by the way you conduct your business? So it's broad and deep. So they said you have to be careful what you ask for, you might get it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
The next item is consider approval of Texas Principal Evaluation and Support System as the principal evaluation instrument. As the board is very much aware, we were a school district that participated in the pilot of TPES and T-Test, and this agenda item is allowing the district to move forward with that as a system for evaluating our principals. And then the next agenda item deals with evaluating our students.
How'd you find that system? I mean, what do you think about it? We're moving forward, but give me some insight here.
Last year, T-Test was piloted by certain campuses to evaluate teachers.
Right.
So some of us were on PDOS. George Ranch, I'll use as an example, was PDOS. In the other campuses, they used the T-Test. This year, under T-Pest, I was T-Pest trained, and I evaluated the campus principals only under T-Pest, and it was good. I like it. I believe they do too. The difference transitioning over to T-Test, and I know that was the second item in T-Pest, is the setup of it overall. It requires pre-conferencing, mid-year conferencing, and end-of-year conferencing. And then along with the pre-conference at the beginning of the year is that is the goal-setting conference as well. And so we generally determine whether we're going to set 1, 2, or 3 goals. And then those are what we revisit throughout the year. It's scripted, it's reflective, and it requires a lot of feedback and a lot of dialogue. So I think it's been well received.
Good, thank you.
And isn't the difference, basically, from what I remember, you could be evaluated and sign it online and never really almost interact with your building principal. And this time it's forcing you, if I'm correct on this, or to actually come
There's a lot of
forward.
face-to-face involved.
A lot of
yes.
face-to-face involved, and inner searching of what you want to do.
It is, and I will tell you,
Do better
and
yourself.
I know a lot of them are here tonight, they will tell you too that the teachers, they like feedback, and this is a tool and a system that has provided that. And welcome.
Perfect. You're doing great.
She's so eager to come up.
Ms. Hack, I have a question. Recently, obviously, every time an administrator comes on board, they go through the training. How long will it take for everybody to be retrained, and are we going to be looking?
The administrators?
Yes.
They do their annual recertification. Most of our staff are already trained because of the fact that we've been a pilot district for 2 years. But this system requires annual certification, which annual recertification is an online process, so they can do it at their convenience. The other training is 2 days, I think. They have a 3-day leadership component if they haven't already completed that in their graduate program that they would complete, and then the 2-day training.
Does it change anything of what's required of the staff? So, for example, the staff is pretty familiar with what the administrator's looking for when they walk in. Does that change as well, or?
It's very different in this process, but the staff goes through an orientation, a half-day orientation, so they become familiar. And again, we've piloted it for 2 years, so they've lived with it. We're 2 years ahead of everybody else.
So all the schools have piloted now?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Question. When you're stating that it says all LCISD principals, is that elementary, all up?
Assistant
everyone?
principals and principals.
Okay, at all levels? Okay, We jump to the second one. Does anybody have any more questions?
Okay.
I expect that much interaction would lead to fewer surprises as the year goes on. You're hoping?
You would hope.
Yes. It also leads for very productive conversation should there be problems. Very
Do they
productive.
still do the 5-minute through this, or does that?
Oh, we still do 6 walkthroughs as well.
Okay.
Yeah, of
Okay,
course.
I have, on the teacher evaluation, the first year, and I think I read that article and I had asked you about it at that time. It says that all the campuses participated in the second year of the pilot program, same as the principals. What I question is, this recommendation will be piloted by volunteer campuses.
That's the second
So
piece.
how does that work?
That's the second piece that we're talking about. That's the student growth piece. Part of this instrument is that you have to have a component of your evaluation that measures student growth. And there's a variety of ways to do it. That's the next pilot phase. For the upcoming school year, we'd like to pilot. Everyone will use the actual instrument, and then the student growth piece will be piloted. And we have campuses that have already volunteered for that.
How many volunteered?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I can look at that list.
Elementary?
Yeah.
I mean,
somebody
is it
from each.
proportionate from each one?
I don't know if it's proportionate, but we did have some volunteers, so I'll look.
Okay. Thank you.
And this is the prelude to all school districts in the state of Texas will either have to use TPAS or T-test or design their own system. And that goes into effect.
This coming year, the school year, the instrument has to be in place for 16-17, and the growth piece has to be in place for all districts in state 17-18.
What magazine did I read that in?
It was in.
That we get it, we
It
get
was-
a monthly,
Was it Texas?
It's that same one, yeah.
it was about 6 months, or 6 months or a year ago?
It's probably school board's back.
It's one of,
It was in the pack, yeah, it was.
yeah.
Lone Star.
It was not last month.
It was very descriptive.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is consider approval of Lamar CISD Student Code of Conduct and Extracurricular Code of Conduct for 2016-17. We're asking the board to approve these. Excuse me. And Ms. Hack will give you just a brief overview of the process that they went through, as well as what the recommendations are.
Okay. We started at the beginning of the school year. One of the first requests was the campuses, and I'm speaking to secondary, wanted to an overview of the current secondary handbook and to go through it. A couple things were noted. They wanted to look at adding some things, revisiting some things, and then the format of it. And that was one of the biggest requests, was the reformatting and the order of things. So it was really stopping and looking and revisiting the whole thing. So what we did is we formed a committee, sent out to the campus principals, and they could elect to put whoever they wanted on the committee, 2, 3, 4 representatives from each campus. And so we began meeting regularly in October. Became very apparent from the very beginning that we would split the big committee into subcommittees based on the sections in the handbook. The first one being parental rights and on through there. The subcommittees would meet on their own to review their information, make sure they were getting the updates coming out of the legislature and of course TASB, and then visiting other districts and what their handbooks look like. We continue to meet. At the same time last fall, especially with opening up our 5th color track, Fulshear and Lehman, and due to some things that we were working through at the high school level, it became apparent that we needed an extracurricular code of conduct as well to help us govern and become consistent between the campuses and the color tracks in regards to how we work with our students and extracurricular events. So that kind of came together as well. So that was the second committee that formed. The handbook committee was based on all campuses' representation, and Erin Forbes is here tonight, and I have to kind of go, lack of a kid, give her a shout out. She kind of headed the committee as far as the format and all the edits and revisions, and it was a huge task, so I wanted to make sure I noted that.
And Erin is the assistant principal
At Foster High School.
Foster High School.
There she is. And then the extracurricular code of conduct, that became a second committee. And so Coach Rice, Coach Sean McDowell at Foster High School headed up the athletic portion of it, and then Mr. Ramastrada and Mrs. Rhonda Klutz, choir teacher at Terry High School. They were the leads on the extracurricular code of conduct, and they vetted the information through all the campus coordinators, the head coaches, the fine art directors, and so that was multiple meetings on their part. They're here as well tonight, and they can speak to that, and they just did a tremendous job. So both of these started last fall through the committees. Beginning second semester, this is when their revisions, their edits, we started vetting these through the secondary principals meetings, which we have each month, as well as what we call our campus leadership team meetings each month. And campus leadership team meetings we meet once a month, and campus principals send all involved staff that they think need to attend, from counselors to registrars to testing coordinators to instructional coaches. They attend one of two sessions where we started vetting the changes through the CLTs as well to see if they were pro, con, support, yes, no. In addition, in March, after this had gone through the committees, secondary principals meetings, CLTs, we started putting the information out to the specific departments at Brazos Crossing and at the annex, special ed, so that they were reading through it and making sure that the information was correct, updated. So it was a real team process, which brings us to tonight, to the approval of the 16-17 handbook and extracurricular code of conduct. There were some changes, the proposed revisions. I thought I would go through those, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have on those. Okay? You ready? Okay. You do have an excerpt from the secondary student handbook regarding the dress and grooming. Our previous dress and grooming was bullets from our original handbook. The committee came back on the dress and grooming, and they wanted to go with more of a chart format. So this is where the format came from. I will tell you that this triggers a lot of discussion through the committees, secondary principals meetings, CLTs, to really get us to come to consensus. The big change right here is in regards to hair, and I wanted to note that. In regards to grades 9 through 12, if you look under hair on the chart, hair must be clean, well-groomed, and out of the eyes, and shall be in a non-distracting hair color that is styled in a way that is neither distracting nor conspicuous. If you look down at grades 6 through 8, they have a few adjustments. 6 through 8 still wants to enforce the facial hair must be clean shaving during class time through 8th grade, which means they must be clean shaven through 8th grade. High school, we changed a few years ago that they could have facial hair, although it must be well-groomed. And they've done a very good job adhering to that. Grades 6 through 8, in regards to the psychedelic colors, nor have letters or designs shaved in their head. Where we came back to secondary, and because each campus has a different culture, in trying to reach consensus, it became very apparent that the secondary high school campus principals wish to retain the autonomy that when they're working, and I'll say campus administration, the autonomy that when they're working with students, that they can take into consideration and have the autonomy to consider what's in the best interest of the campus, as well as that particular student. Because many times campus administrators, in working with the student, are privy to information about that child and circumstances that perhaps allows them to work with the child and make decisions based for that child, but it still maintains the expectations they have for that campus. And so that was the wording that we came up with, that they all were in agreement with. If you look at the paragraph right underneath the chart, the last statement says that anytime anything that they wear is inappropriate, a safety concern, or can reasonably be expected to cause disruption or interference with normal school operations, it is prohibited. So if there is something that they attempt to do that's so outside the bounds that it is disruptive, the campus administration still has the autonomy to address it. Any questions I can
So
answer?
what you're trying to say is that there is a rule, but you're giving each campus some wiggle room, so to
The
speak?
autonomy, yes, because
Because only that principal knows that child and
many
their
times.
circumstances.
And they will, I'll give you a perfect example. We'll visit their campus when we have a meeting on campus. And there's a child that's, and in no way disruptive, in no way impacting instruction, is in no way hurting anything, perhaps looks just a little bit different. The principal will many times feel compelled to step over and explain, hey, I just want to let you know about this child. We're working with them. We're taking care of it this way. And you know what? They do. And I trust them, and I want to make sure that they have that faith that we do trust them.
As long as other students see that that child's not getting
Exactly.
away with something that others are not being.
And that, and at the same time, empathy and tolerance are being shown and demonstrated.
I think this is a great idea, moving down to the point of contact instead of having somebody very high up totally disconnected, say, we can't do that.
Yeah.
Concrete, nothing.
It's a great
I
group
think it's
back
great.
there, yeah.
Tremendous piece of work, it's all done.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank y'all very much. Pages 7 through 9. The revised and, these are the standards of conduct. I will tell you, this particular subcommittee spent a lot of time with this. They enhanced it somewhat for the student standards. Parent standards, they really evaluated the teacher standards and administrator standards, what we need to be held accountable to, and a document that they can refer parents and students, staff, and themselves to hold us accountable. Pages 9 through 12. If you look at page 9, highlighted in yellow, minor offenses, major offenses, we added the definitions. Because many times when you're working with a child and that parent, and you're trying to explain perhaps why the discipline seems as harsh as it does to the parent, and you want to use the term major offense, we really didn't have anything to reference, so why isn't it a minor offense? So we added the definitions, and this is what this particular subcommittee worked on in regards to that. If you turn to page 12, we added the definition of consequences. Page 13, this particular section was already housed in the handbook in section 1, parental rights, but we went in and added it a second time, because when you get into the code of conduct, so many times you're dealing with bullying, so we just added this, and it's exactly as what is in section 1 of the handbook. On page 15, the definitions or explanation for physical restraint as well as self-defense, we added that information. And then the committee also came back with the chart that they wanted to add to the code of conduct, so that when a decision is made, that the parent can reference that and know who their next person to contact is. And that one was very well received. Page 16. The disciplinary action for bus safety violations, I will say that last fall, when we all came together following that particular incident, secondary to work together prior to our transportation director coming on board, we came together and to get some consistency in how we were working with kids and to support the bus drivers. This is what the committee came up with. It has worked very well, and the secondary campuses have done a great job implementing it and to ensure we're consistent among the color tracks. If you turn to page 18, we added the definitions of minor and major offenses, but with that, we have a discipline committee that we come together and we evaluate the discipline that's occurring on the campuses so that we can identify if perhaps there's trends, if perhaps the consequences that we're assessing truly deter the behavior. But with that, we found that we needed to be more specific as what was categorized as a minor offense, a major offense, and with that, to be more specific as to the behavior. So many things fell under failure to follow rules. Well, we weren't sure what that was. Was it in the classroom? Was it language? So a lot of these have been added with codes that the administrators will put into our student management system. So now when we run the reports, we'll have very specific data to evaluate. Is there a trend of a type of behavior that as an administrative team we need to address? Is it a trend within a particular color track? And are our consequences in line with what the behavior that is occurring?
And you'll share some of that after that comes through, right?
Mm-hmm. It really will. It will help. We also added, and I think this will be well received, location codes as well. If the behavior is occurring, but is it always occurring out on the bus porch? Or is it in the student parking lot? And so when you start putting that location, then we can see that these typical things.
Need maybe more supervision.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So. And then we added an extracurricular handbook. And you have that document, and this was created by a team. And I would like to call up Coach McDowell and Mrs. Klutz and Coach Rice are here. They headed this committee and did a tremendous job. Y'all will come up. And Mr. Estrada, he made it to Dallas tonight. He's up there. And I also have to say, at 8 o'clock, they're releasing online the Tommy Tunes Awards.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. Is there anything particular about the extracurricular code of conduct? And kind of in the overview, if you look on page 1, the extracurricular philosophy, that second sentence, that middle paragraph, second sentence from the bottom.
That's right.
The extracurricular program at Lamar CISD is a privilege, and as such, the student is held to a much higher standard than that of the general school population. Therefore, the guidelines and rules that each coach director establishes for the team may be more stringent than those delineated in the student code of conduct. But we at least have an overview that applies to all campuses and any type of competitive program that would apply to any type of CTE competitive program as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank y'all so much. Erin, thank you. Thank you. Woo, it's like birthing a baby.
See, you do it well. We don't ask any questions.
The next item on the agenda is consider approval of district-wide computer refresh.
Good evening. In summer of 2014, with 2011 bond, we replaced about 12,000 computers in the district. And this project will replace about 5,300 that were not replaced in that last project.
Any questions?
Nope.
Next item is consider approval of purchase of network switches.
This is also about replacing some things that weren't replaced last time. The network switches at Lamar Jr., George Jr., and here at Brazos Crossing were not replaced before. They are old and failing and causing problems, and it's time to replace those as well. And that's out of 2014 bond money dedicated to network infrastructure.
Consider approval of purchase of network security appliance.
Also a project funded in the 2014 bond network infrastructure. This is our firewall. This is our security appliance. You were nice enough to approve our upgraded bandwidth contract last time, our internet contract, and now we exceed speeds beyond what our old firewall can handle, and this brings our security and firewall up to our current standards and into the future.
Understand everything.
Excellent.
Tell them how we're above everybody else from other districts. That we're better.
Yes, we do compare very favorably to other districts.
As I said, leading edge, not bleeding edge.
That's my goal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next items are information items, and we'll answer any questions that the board may have regarding any of those information items. We do have our medical plan structure changes that It's being presented to the board now so that you can have a feel for the upcoming changes that we're going to have to look at when it comes to our medical plan. And so I think it probably would be good if Dr. Bowen and if you all would just give just a overview of the plan.
Based on the increasing costs of medical care, as well as the increased number of participants that we have on our plan, and some exceptions that we've had as far as high-cost claims, the district is looking at making some minor revisions to the premium structure for our employees. There will be no change to the current benefits offered. We're looking at a reduction of an increase on premiums of 10% for the in-network only plan and 20% for the in and out-of-network plan. And on page 166, we've got a comparison for you of the current premiums, the proposed premiums, and what that dollar amount would be for increases. Again, no change to the benefits offered. They'll have their same co-pays, the same services available to them in both plans.
And this will be coming back to the board later for, go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's an information item. When we make the premium change, it's an information item.
And have the teachers or have they had information about this? Have they been meeting?
They have. What we
Brought
do,
back to the campuses?
Right, exactly. We have an insurance committee, and the campuses and departments send representatives to those regular meetings, and they're kept in the loop kind of throughout the year where the plan's running, what the concerns are, and so they've had information related to what the structure would look like.
And do they bring feedback back to you?
They should, yes. Yes, that is the plan. And so they are aware that there will be some premium changes.
I also mentioned the increased contribution from the school.
Absolutely. If you'll look on page 165, we mentioned that the current contribution per employee per month for the district is $355, and it will be increased to $420. So the district's increasing their portion as well.
You got a question?
Yes, sir.
Is it just the increased cost of the plan is why you doubled the amount of increase from 10% to 20%?
Because what the in and out of network cost us, exactly. The out of network costs tend to be where many of our expenses are, and our costs are more manageable in the in-network. So we want to make that plan the most attractive plan. Out of network doctors are expensive.
How much of an increase are our employees going to have to contribute?
If you'll look at the chart, it depends on the plan that they have, but the lowest increase is $4.03 per month, and it ranges up from there, and I think the highest is $69.74 a month if they have the lowest deductible and they carry their entire family. So it just kind of depends on the plan that they have. Those are for the in-network only.
Someone who has to insure their whole family, I mean, the people at the lower end of the pay scale, that's going to be much more than what their raise is going to be. I think that we maybe need to increase the amount that the district contributes,
And
or absorb the amount. Realistically,
we did increase the amount that the district is contributing from $355 to $420. So the district is absorbing. Somebody have to do the math on that. 45 plus.
we have an idea of
$65.
We're
75,
increasing the district contribution to the plan by $3.2 million. So we are absorbing 18%.
18%?
18% increase, yes.
of the increase. We have people getting 3% raises, and they're going to be paying a large part of that.
Well, again, it depends on which coverage level and which plan they choose and who they cover and all that. The lowest midpoint in our pay scale is $11.19 an hour. And if we gave a 1% raise, that would equate to about $206 a year, or about $17 a month. So, for instance, if they were in the Plan C, in only EPO plan, their change would be $4.03. But in the same plan, it would be $43.87. So, yes, there are going to be situations where their raise would not cover it if we did a 1%. But of course, that varies, as that difference varies by what percentage raise if we if we do approve a raise this year. But
My-
that's all determined during the budget process.
And my concern is that some of the people at the lower end of the scale who had the best or the higher level of coverage for their family will no longer be able to contribute that to provide their family with the best protection that is available. And, you know, that's my concern. Those people have children, and I think we have to do everything we can for them. And if that means that we're gonna, you know, have to absorb more of the cost, I think we need to look at it and do it. I don't want anybody moving down their level of coverage because they can't afford to feed their family.
Can you explain the affordable care, how this is kind of out of our heads as far as the expense, the increases with the Affordable Care Act and some of the restrictions you have?
The Affordable Care Act provides guidelines in terms of how much the out-of-pocket cost can be on what they call a qualified plan. That's the combination of the deductible, co-pays, pharmacy co-pays. There's an aggregate amount annually that maximum it can be in a plan year and still be considered a qualified plan.
Our plans are qualified, correct?
All
of our
6 of
plans
the district's plans
meet
are qualified under the Affordable Care Act. They meet the minimum essential value test and the affordability test.
Is there a maximum that we can contribute?
There is no maximum. There's no statutes or law that says that, you know, that you can contribute beyond a certain amount. What the district is trying to do is just to bring into balance or to keep some proportionality between what the historic amount that the district is contributing towards the total cost and that percentage that the employees contribute totally in terms of cost. And the district has always contributed a higher amount of the total cost than what the employees contribute. So we've tried to keep that balance over the years.
Oh. The one thing about it is, if they're not gonna be able to afford the coverage, I think we need to absorb more of the cost. We need to look at, I mean, we have a lot of money in the surplus account. We maybe need to look at reallocating some of that towards healthcare.
Dr. Bowen, I have a question. When we are making a decision on how much the district is going to contribute, do we take other districts into consideration, and where are we in proportion to them?
We do, and as Burke likes to say, and I'll quote Burke, we're ahead of the pack. We're in it. Some things are difficult to compare in that some districts are in TRS active care, which is a little bit different. The premiums on that are significantly higher than ours, the employee premiums. So those contributions are $255 per employee per month.
And we are at?
Currently $355 and looking at next year $420.
$420, wow, okay, thank you.
Early in our meeting, you said that most employees select Plan A.
Mm-hmm.
So for the most part, it's going to be actually a $7.89 increase.
Correct,
Yeah,
I think
not necessarily
60-ish, 67%.
About 60,
Mid-
mid 60% of the employees are in Plan A EPO.
And employee
with
owned.
themselves
Right.
and their
Okay.
covered dependents.
Right. So that first column on the far right is the one that they would be, the impact that they would be experiencing.
That's how much they pay per month.
The proposed, and then the far right column is the change.
And that's over 2 paychecks?
Correct, that is over 2 paychecks. This is per month.
Dr. Bowen, can you give me an idea of how many of our substitute teachers are opting into this program? I know that last year, we had to give substitute teachers the
We did.
option, correct?
We did, and,
They're not very many,
Yeah.
about 15.
yeah.
Okay, so that didn't increase our cost
Not-
significantly?
Not at all.
Okay.
Growth is an issue. I mean, we're obviously covering more people than we have in the past. And with that, the bigger your pool gets, the bigger your costs get.
So what's the total number of people that we have that are making $11.19 an hour? That's the lowest that we pay, and
That's a midpoint. That is a midpoint.
Oh, that's a midpoint. So we
Right.
still have people that are making less than this an hour.
Mhm.
Wow, so they're just working to pay for
Manual
insurance.
trades pay grade 1.
Yeah, that's the point I'm making. We've got a lot of people in maintenance stuff that are at the low end of the pay scale.
That's it.
Excuse me.
Any other?
Just like we were talking, it's a big challenge. And we were also talking about other businesses, and there are some employees having to play, their part is as much as $1,000 a month in private sectors. So our portion of the district trying to meet what's comparable to other districts, we're actually below, well, we're ahead. We're pretty close with the same contributions, but we're experiencing more families, or more teachers. So that's.
I think she said we contribute more than other districts. We're
Right, we
about
contribute
$100
more, yeah, excuse me.
Well,
For the TRS districts.
TRS districts,
Right,
right.
for the TRS, for the districts who are in TRS active here.
The state mandates for the districts that are in TRS, they have to contribute a minimum of $225.
Oh, okay.
In the Houston area, the average district contribution is north of $400. There are a number of large districts that are pushing $500 per month or greater.
Can you give us some examples of some of those districts?
Houston ISD is north of 500. Katy is at about 425, 450. Fort Bend is probably in the high 300s, low 400s.
So even with their numbers being much greater than ours, we're doing pretty well.
And when you take into account also what the district is currently and proposed charging the employees to cover themselves and/or their dependents, the district will still be in a very competitive position. And I do understand your comments and your concerns about the cost. It's a struggle between, balancing taxpayer resources as well as what you can make affordable and benefits and whatnot to the employees. But the district, I believe, continues, even with the proposed changes to the premiums, will be in a very competitive position with the districts that you compete for talent.
My concern is, I'm not concerned at all how much we pay compared to the other districts. My concern is, you have here arranged like the employee only, the employee and his spouse, the employee and the children, and the family. And when you start insuring a family, it gets up there pretty high. Okay, so someone at the lower end of the pay scale is not going to be able to provide insurance for his entire family, and I think that that's unacceptable. I think that we have enough money in the budget that we can give these people enough of a raise where that's not going to be an issue.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd still like to find out what the percentage of individuals are that are at that lower salary range or hourly rate. I don't know what's the lowest paid person that we have, and
It would be our manual trades pay grade 1.
And how much is that?
The minimum is $8.95 an hour.
$8 and what?
95 cents. That's
Okay,
the
so
starting.
I'd like to know how many people we have making that, and then the next one and the next one, and just kind of go on until you get to, I guess, the midpoint. How much is it, 19, and how much is that annually?
It depends on the position, because if it's a food service position, they're not 8 hours a day and they don't work year round. So it really depends on the position. Some of those are 5-hour-a-day positions and they work 180 days. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, $8.95 an hour is basically starvation. That's almost enough money to starve on. I mean, I pay unskilled labor, I pay at least $100, $125 a day, depending on the job.
I think we can pull together some information, and at least we'll give you some general idea of how many.
Yeah, I
how
just
many
want to
people
know,
we're
like, how
talking
much does a person who makes $19 an hour on a full-time basis, how much is that annually? I mean, is that $20,000, $25,000 a year? I mean.
That's going to be a little over
It's not make
$20,000.
it complicated, you know?
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
It's about 23,000.
We'll assume it's a full-time.
Those are, unless board members have questions about any.
I have a question on the bond committee information, item number 9. I'll have to say I was pretty surprised when I turned to that page. I guess when I asked for information on a bond committee, I was expecting more than Ms. Roberts requested this information to be placed on the item of the agenda. I really was looking for more of an idea of how we select a committee, how many representatives from different locations we have, or different schools, the administration. How long does it take from beginning to end? What is the administration's timeline to start and to end? I think we were all here for the demographer's report. I don't know that we have a lot of time to waste to start trying to get something like this together. So if we could perhaps get some additional information based on what I just said, that would be great.
Yes, and we can do that. Now that we have clarity on what the request is, we can do that.
Would you, yes, ma'am.
Just from your experiences, trying to establish a timeline, can you just kind of give us a timeline that we're looking at now?
Well, ultimately, most districts will recommend that this is the opportune timeline to go out for, say, a November 2017 bond. We would take this entire school year to have a comprehensive needs assessment, and then right about the March timeframe, immediately following the 27 demographic report, the board would give administration the ability to create the bond committee. The bond committee would meet over 3, 4, 5 months. In August, the board would call a bond referendum, and we would be ready to roll. And so essentially then from, September, October into November, we would be marketing the bond, talking about the bond, speaking about it to the public when they go out to the polls in November.
And this would be in 2017, correct?
Correct.
Maybe we assume that is the target.
Yes.
Okay.
So immediately following the demographic report, we kind of had the same reaction that y'all did. It was, wow, we're going to be #1 in terms of housing units over the greater Houston area over the next decade. But we went back and we looked at the demographic report more with a focus, and we could tell immediately that the real need was primarily only at George Ranch High School. It wasn't for elementary campuses, middle schools, junior highs. It was only really for one campus. We looked those out. We don't need a 6th elementary school until 2019, so whether we went in 2016 or 17, we had options. We didn't need a middle school until 2021, a junior high until 2022, or a high school until 2023, with the exception of George Ranch. George Ranch will be over capacity next year with 2,516 students, but over a 5-year time period, they're going to be at 2,804 by 2020, so roughly 288 students. So if we went out for a bond immediately in November 2016 to alleviate that campus, well, I'm giving the reference. If you went out in 2016, it would open in 2019 with, it would have had 2,744 students. Giving a full year of a needs assessment the next year is 2,804 students. So there's a difference of 60 students between taking a full year to look at what's best not only for that campus, but the district. And we talked about that with elementary and secondary education, what that looked like. When you saw the whole picture, we were good except for that one campus. They don't have any portables on there right now. They're doing some strategies to move classrooms, et cetera. So we felt just looking at that, the best thing to do was to plan this year with the comprehensive needs assessment, looking at a 2017 bond, which would fall in line with our 3-year bond cycle. More specifically, I don't have the information off the top of my head, but a bond committee is 65 members. Each trustee is able to put 3 representatives on that committee, and then the rest of the committee is made up of community members. So each one of you would pick 3 folks to put on the committee from your single-member district. We would fill that in with community members who applied or had interest in doing so, community leaders, et cetera, and then we would set that schedule accordingly. Again, probably about March for that whole process to begin if we're looking at a 2017 bond. So the plan was to basically look at what we needed with our campuses from now until then.
Do you put students on the bond committee also?
Yes, there are students. There's 2 representatives from each high school that are on the bond committee, so we'd have 10 for that bond committee.
Did I understand you correctly? Did you say that we are currently under a needs assessment? Is that correct, or are we going to begin?
Right, that's the plan. So essentially, what we're doing in our facilities planning meetings for the district, we're starting that process now to look at until we get our 2017 demographic report in February. We would then be prepared, the board would be aware that that's kind of what the district has been doing, and then in March, you would say, go do it, and then we would immediately start attracting those folks for the committee. You all would pick your representatives, we would have that scheduled, and then we would basically work from that point all the way to November of 2017 to have a new high school and whatever else the district deems necessary for a bond.
Does anyone have any more questions?
Well, go ahead. At that time, when you're doing the needs assessment, during the actual process, people can bring other needs in at that time from the committee, correct?
Correct. So there's an administrative needs assessment, and typically what that is everything that we need in Lamar CISD from a district administration point of view, kind of the bare necessities along with some other items. We bring that forward once the committee work begins, and there's a facilitator, and then anyone is allowed to put any item up for discussion. Last year they talked about football stadium, they talked about an event center and those kind of things, but ultimately those items were removed and they stuck with the campuses that we needed and some of the things that obviously ended up on the 2014 bond.
And I have one last statement. In the future, if there's any question on what I'm asking for, if I could just at least get the courtesy of a phone call or an email so that I can clarify, so that I don't open up my page excitedly and find a one sentence at the top, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. As far as I'm understanding, you've got the ball rolling already. It's already started.
We're making plans, yes, to look at 2017.
Okay. Good. Thank you. I have one question on the bus, just a quick discipline. I noticed it said it declined from 100, it declined to 182 from 369 referrals in 1 month.
Well, that was a short month, too. That went from
Okay.
February.
I was going,
know,
was there some miracle or something?
I think in February, the Christmas spirit kind of ran, wore off. And we had a pretty high month there at a 360 or so. And then in March, it was a short month. And it had spring break, so everybody was in a better mood.
It was good news. I was curious, maybe were the bus drivers issuing less, or has the policy changed, or are the students understanding a little bit better that y'all are serious about the write-ups?
I don't think there was, there wasn't any policy change. I think it's fairly typical of what we normally see.
Okay.
In that, February comes along, then March comes along, we have a week break in there, which kind of restores everybody's spirit. They're not as on edge, and then we came back the following week and had a 4-day weekend following that, so that reduced it. I think you're going to see, though, what we've seen historically is that, in April and May, those numbers are going to rise again.
Stress levels
It's the end of the year, tempers are shorter than they are, earlier in the year, and that's fairly typical.
Okay. Thanks for explaining that.
Some of this, just some of this training that, and it's really nice to see, has this been there and we just didn't know about it because it hadn't been reported, or are you finding more training to send some of your, or you don't know the answer to that question?
I don't have the entire history. I know that some of the stuff that we did, like with the mechanics, they said they've gone to this in the past, but it's been a while. So we were able to get them into those classes over in League City back in February. And we want to get them all of that we can get. That's pretty expensive, those classes. The tuition for that day-long class is about $65 per person. So we're going to get them, all of that we can get our hands on.
But I think the more training and things you do, it betters your.
Absolutely.
And thank you for starting to break down the statistics on the accidents for me.
You're welcome. We're going to keep that coming.
Mr. Jones, I have a question. Do we have an estimate of how many additional drivers we're going to need in the upcoming year?
Not a good one. We're working on the routes out there. We're going to have some overlap with the routes where we're going to have to bring those upperclassmen in from the Fulshire area into Foster, and the guys are starting to work on that now.
Are you seeing a lot of double routes because of that?
We will have some multiples because the 11th to 12th graders from the Fulshire area will have to come into Foster along with those that are electing to come over. So we'll have some overlap where routes will, we'll have 2 buses showing up for the 2 different high schools.
Thank you.
And I will compliment you on the behavior the drivers come to Bridlewood, since that's a major route between the bus barn and George. That is going very, very well, thank you.
Well, thank you, and we did make some changes out there, so in the mornings, when they leave the Georgia Ranch complex, we've routed them out through Rice Field and to bring them back, just to get them out of the traffic and eliminate those 2 railroad crossings, because they'll have to cross once to get back on the 762 and then another time to get back in the yard.
Hopefully, the new
So,
traffic patterns in about a year from now, that'll assist that as well, but right now, I appreciate everything you've done out there.
Thank you.
It's Mr. HOA Police.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions or comments? Do we have to go on comments? We're not going into closed session tonight. We'll do that tomorrow next. Okay. All right. The meeting is adjourned. It is now 8:30.